All right, let's go over some terms that are going to be involved here with our muscles. So first of all, let's start off with atrophy and hypertrophy. All right, so for those of you who are remembering your medical terminology, atrophy is going to be when the muscles have decreased in size, whereas hypertrophy is when the muscles have increased in size. This is not to be confused with hyperplasia, which is when they have increased in number. Now, typically, when we're talking atrophy, we are talking about it because the muscles or cell or organ in question is not being used anymore. There's that saying, use it or lose it. Does come into play here a little bit. Whereas hypertrophy, if you're at the gym lifting weights, increasing that weight, you are going to increase the size. If you are an endurance athlete, you do increase the size. It's just not noticeable as if you're lifting weights because you're increasing the size in a slightly different way. And you're not only increasing size, you're actually changing the makeup of the muscle fiber itself. So it is more efficient with its glucose and oxygen and CRP and everything, as well as increasing its ability to store glucose and oxygen and CRP. So you're actually changing the chemical makeup of your cells when you do things like endurance workouts. All right. What is a twitch? Well, first of all, let's talk about twitches in regards to a Frege experiment. So, threshold is the minimum voltage necessary to produce an action potential. So this is a term, again, we will come across when we are talking about nerves. So threshold is the minimum we need to get that action potential generated. Does that mean you can have a voltage over that? Absolutely. But it's the minimum we need. A single brief stimulus at that voltage is going to produce a quick cycle of contraction and relaxation. This is typically going to be referred to as a twitch. It lasts less than 1/10 of a second because it's a very single brief. Twitches are going to be divided into a couple of different phases. A latent period, which is about 2 milliseconds long, or has a 2 millisecond delay, where there's internal tension that is generated, but no visible contraction will occur because it's just the elastic components that are being stretched. We're not really going to see anything here because we're just tensing up. The contraction phase is when you have external tension that is actually going to cause shortening. It's not just an increase in internal tension. And then the relaxation phase where all of this resets. You lose that tension, it lengthens back out, calcium returns to the sarcoplasmic reticulum, everything goes back to normal. In and of themselves, a single twitch is not going to do anything useful if you notice it at all. However, we can do something called recruitment. Recruitment is when we get lots of twitches. And we also have something called stimulus intensity. Stimulus intensity is exactly what it sounds like. We increase the voltage, and the higher and higher the voltage is, the stronger the contractions are. We can also recruit. When we recruit, these motor units are going to do something called summate. It's exactly what it sounds like from a math standpoint. 1 + 1 = 2. I have 1 twitch plus 1 twitch, so now I have 2 twitches at the same time. This is what's going to allow us to actually do something with these twitches. So the number of twitches I need is going to depend upon the load I am moving. So the example given here is I will utilize or recruit more motor nerves, motor units specifically, to twitch to lift a gallon of milk versus the amount that I need to lift a glass of milk. I need a whole lot less for a glass of milk. All right. Now, higher frequency stimulation, so you get about 20 to 40 stimuli per second, is going to generate a gradually stronger contraction. Basically, what is happening is the stimuli, the impulse, is coming in before the last one recovers. So instead of going back into that relaxation phase, we're staying in that contraction phase. This can be in two different ways, known as temporal or wave summation. We're not going to worry about that here. And there is something we do need to mention, which is something called incomplete tetanus. Incomplete tetanus is when you have fluttering contractions. So instead of having one smooth, sustained contraction, it's pulsing. Which brings us to maximum frequency stimulation. Maximum frequency stimulation is when those stimuli, those action potential generators, are coming in at about 40 to 50 per second. The muscle never, ever relaxes, and this is going to fuse them into one smooth, prolonged contraction called complete tetanus. But here's the thing. We may think, when I do a bicep curl, that this is what is occurring. But what's actually occurring is the high frequency stim. Maximum frequency stimulation rarely occurs in the body. And when it does, it's usually due to something else, like the condition tetanus, which is due to a spore. You don't want it. It's why you get tetanus shot. Yeah. Which reminds me, if you have not gotten a tetanus shot or booster in the past 10 years, I strongly encourage you to do so, especially as you are going to be going into the healthcare community. Also, just for regular precautions, especially if you live more in a country setting, you never know when you're going to step on something that has been buried in the ground and can transfer that spore into your body. All right, we do need to talk about muscle tone. Muscle tone, otherwise known as tonus, is for, muscles that are not completely at rest. Some motor units within particular muscles are always active, even though the muscle itself does not appear to necessarily be contracting. What's actually going to occur is that the contractions that are being generated don't cause movement, but they do tense and firm up the muscle. This is a resting tension that we refer to as tone in the healthcare community. And what motor units are involved are going to constantly change depending on what you're doing. Basically, what's going to occur is resting muscle is going to help stabilize the position of your bones and your joints. Take a look at whatever position you are in right now. Are you sitting? Are you standing? Are you laying on your back, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I'm droning on? Now, focus on your muscles. Those of you who are sitting or standing, this one's really easy to visualize. Your neck muscles, your back muscles, your abdominal muscles. Maybe you're holding something in your arm. Even though you're not actively moving in it, these muscles are constantly contracting just enough to keep you where you are. Even when you are laying down, you are going to have muscles that are constantly just flexed enough to help maintain whatever position your limbs are in. We do need to talk about fatigue. Fatigue is progressive weakness and loss of contractility from prolonged use. Fatigue has a variety of different causes. Could be due to Loss of energy production. ATP synthesis declines because glycogen is being consumed. You don't have ready available sources of glucose to make ATP. So you have an ATP shortage. This ATP shortage will then in turn cause sodium-potassium pumps to fail, which means membrane potential and excitability is going to go wonky as well. Other things that can occur here is lactic acid buildup. So if we have been utilizing that glycolysis cycle, lactic acid is going to lower the pH of sarcoplasm, which is going to inhibit enzyme function. The accumulation of extracellular potassium is going to lower, again, that membrane potential and excitability, making it harder for that membrane to reach that threshold to get that action potential to actually do something. And then motor nerve fibers in and of themselves are going to just flat out, they're going to not have any acetylcholine. They have to make acetylcholine. So if they have used everything that they've already made, it's going to take a little bit for them to make more. If we have no acetylcholine, it's not binding to receptors. The receptors aren't opening, allowing sodium to come in. Sodium isn't coming in, causing us to try and hit that threshold. And it's just going to be a cascade effect from there. Some other terms here we need to be aware of. Isotonic contractions. Isotonic contractions are going to be when tension reaches a plateau and the muscle shortens. So, take a look at this experiment. And you can visualize this. Put your arm out and visualize this. So you have a skeletal muscle that is 1 centimeters cubed in cross-sectional area that can develop roughly 4 kilograms of force when it is in complete tightness, which we all know rarely occurs. However, we put a 3 kilogram weight at the end of that muscle and we stimulate it. The muscle shortens, or will try to shorten. Basically, in order for the muscle to shorten, the cross bridges have to produce enough tension to overcome the resistance, in this case, the 3 kilogram weight. Over the period of time, the internal tension needs to rise until the external tension in the tendon exceeds the amount of resistance. As the muscle shortens, that internal and external tension will remain constant at a value that just exceeds the resistance. So this is what you do every single time you lift a weight. You lift a glass of milk, you lift a water jug, you put a bowl of soup in the microwave, whatever you're doing, whatever you're moving, even if it's just raising your hand. You have to generate enough tension to overcome the weight at the end of the lever. This is why lifting weights, you can't just go and lift 100 pounds and then do a bicep curl. Your body, your muscles in your biceps cannot generate the force, the tension necessary to lift that 100 pounds. Now, by training them over time, starting where they are, let's say maybe you can do 10-pound bicep curls, 3 sets of 10. You have some muscle soreness, but you can do it. You start there until it becomes easy. You're easily overcoming that resistance. You add on more weight. So now you're doing 15 pounds until that is easy. And then you move to 20, then 25. Then I've never gotten past 25 myself, so I'm not really sure where the dumbbells go from there. But you get where I'm going. You build up to it. You train your muscles to generate that force, that tension that is necessary to overcome the weight at the end of the lever. Whatever that lever is. That's an isotonic contraction. Isotonic contractions have a fantastic use in healthcare, in rehab, in helping people who are paralyzed maintain muscle mass. Because I don't need to move anything. I just need to get them to generate a contraction, to flex. Just a little bit. That's all I need. And that's going to help them keep their ability and not atrophy. We'll still probably have a little bit, but it helps. And then if I've been paralyzed or I've been in a coma or I've been bedbound for a while and I need to rebuild my muscle strength, chances are I'm not going to just be able to hop out of bed and go for a run. No, I need to retrain my muscles to create that tension, to overcome the resistance at the end of my leg or whatever I'm trying to move. And isotonics have a fantastic role in that. Isometric, that entire thing about rehab and having to just create a contraction, that's isometrics, not isotonics. Isotonics do have a great purpose in rehab. But once our muscles have enough strength to actually move our limbs. So I have retrain them to generate enough force so I can actually move my forearm, my foot, my shin, whatever the case may be. That's where those come into play. Isometric is what we're doing before that. So with isometric contractions, the muscle as a whole is not going to change length, and the tension produced never exceeds the resistance. So, back to my 100-pound example. I'm holding a 100-pound dumbbell in my hand. I'm not even sure if I can actually hold that. But I'm holding this 100-pound dumbbell in my hand. I'm trying to do a bicep curl. But I cannot generate enough tension, enough force to overcome that resistance, that weight. My muscle's it's doing contractions. It is contracting its little heart out. But it just cannot overcome that resistance. It does not have the oomph yet. That's an isometric contraction. The contractions are occurring, but you cannot overcome the resistance, so the muscle as a whole does not shorten. Individuals will until the tendons are taut and the external tensions are equal. So the tension on the tendon is equal to the tension in the muscle, but it won't go past that point. That's isometric. And this is demonstrating that. Now, you might have heard terms like concentric and eccentric as well. Shortening of the muscle is going to be concentric contractions. Tension while lengthening is going to be eccentric. So, if I'm holding that dumbbell and I'm doing a bicep curl, the muscle is shortening, that is going to be concentric muscle contractions. As I lower that dumbbell back to my side, I'm not just dropping it. We're not doing gravity here. I am doing a controlled lowering. That is tension while the muscle is lengthening. That is going to be eccentric contractions. You will have periods when you are lifting of both isometric and isotonic, provided, you overcome the resistance. So when I have that dumbbell in my hand and I'm going to do my dumbbell curl, we initially start in the isometric phase until that tension has overcome, and then we move into isotonic. And we actually move our forearm and move the dumbbell. All right, some terms here. Repolarization. Repolarization is when the membrane potential returns to normal. We're returning it to normal. So those sodium channels close. We open up potassium channels, letting potassium flood back in, and we are going to return to the membrane potential that we want to have. A refractory period is going to be the time during that repolarization when the muscle fiber cannot respond to a new stimulus. One can come in, but nothing is going to happen. This is typically only a few milliseconds long. Something else we need to keep in mind is it's going to be an all or none response. Either all of the fibers are going to respond, everyone that's tied to a motor unit, or none. all of the sarcomeres in a cell are going to respond, or none are. All or none. This is going to be especially true with a cardiac muscle. All or none response actually also comes back to play in the nervous system. We see this in a couple of different places.